Hello, everyone. I'm going to start off by saying I really was envious of men's workwear because it always just seemed really simple and you could put on a suit. I have spent way too long this morning trying to iron this shirt. Please don't judge me, but there's some very crisp shirts out there. Get a lot of credit for it. Right. Okay, there we go. So I will start off by saying thank you so much for having me. I have definitely not solved bridge strikes, so don't worry. There's lots of work we can do there still. Oh, I can look down here. So yeah, I'm Jess Cobbett. I work within the road transport group in the Department for Transport. So basically, as you have seen, the theme around AI is that there's a lot of interest in it and there's a lot of potential and opportunity. But as Alex, my colleague, said yesterday, like one of the biggest hurdles is actually like the cultural change that needs to happen and the behavioral change in order to actually adopt a lot of these technologies and think about what we can take from them. So within the group, I work in the AI team, and we work on innovation and behavioral change work. And it's just me and my colleague Mike, and our main focus is, yes, as I said, improving the cultural, I guess, I guess the culture essentially, and how we think about innovation. And a big part of that, obviously, is psychological safety, because if people aren't willing to think differently, think outside the box, or even ask weird and wonderful questions, you don't change the course of how things currently work. And then, of course, a big part of that is also upskilling people. There are loads of people here that work very closely with technologies and have a lot of expertise in it. And there are a lot of very knowledgeable people within the department, but at the pace in which the AI is developing and other emerging technologies, there is definitely space for us to upskill colleagues, as my colleagues mentioned yesterday. So I'm going to talk to you about the Common Mission Project. And the very basis of it, it's a educational charity that we've partnered with. It started in America because a professor at Stanford University started to notice that most of his top students would graduate and go work for social media companies in Silicon Valley, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but he was worrying that if these are supposedly some of our brightest minds working in social media, who's going to be working on the really knotty, very important security or defense issues? So created this nonprofit called the Common Mission Project and partnered with the Department of Defense in the US, and basically embedded students into the department to kind of actually see the scope of the work that happens within government and actually try and excite them. So it's been part of the UK and working with the Ministry of Defence for the last 5 years. And our pilot, Hacking for Transport, is the first pilot outside of defence. So, it's a big thing is not only upskilling colleagues internally, but hopefully improving a better pipeline for students at universities who are working in incredibly interesting areas and bringing them into the department and working closely with colleagues like you. So the pilot itself has started with 12 problem statements. And I just first of all say thank you so much to Craig as well, because I sent out an email at the beginning on one of the problem statements I'm working on bridge strikes. And I know a bunch of colleagues here actually responded and have taken part in interviews with the students. So really grateful. And I think it's a big indication how effective these networks are. So thank you for that. So the 12 problem statements, the logic of that is that there are 12 executive agencies within the road transport group covering DVLA, DVSA, active travelling, and VCA, and the breadth of stuff that happens within roads. And we've partnered with 5 universities as a starting point. Loughborough, got it up here, I can read, Loughborough, Leeds, Imperial, Newcastle, and Kingston. And I'm really passionate about moving outside of London. And so although 2 of these universities, the hope is that we can kind of continue to grow and partner with universities across the UK. And the beauty of this program is actually that it's not just a student that comes and works with us directly, but master's accredited program. So you get really ambitious, bright students that have all sorts of degrees in tech and entrepreneurship, security, and so on, but then work on problems for 10 to 12 weeks. So this is kind of like the premise of it. I won't kind of go into much more, but essentially, yeah, it ends up equating to about 400-500 hours of research, and it's incredibly useful because, you know, part of the beauty of the students' approach is they will ask very blunt questions. As I said, it's that kind of psychological safety and curiosity to be like, why do you do things the way that you do, rather than, you know, it's very easy. It's all too easy to just say, yeah, actually, we can probably disrupt that. So I worked across the whole road transport group to help curate these problem statements. And essentially, basically, the problem sponsors, and I believe there might be some problem sponsors here as well, but that problem sponsors are based in the industry and can basically sense check what the students are developing. But then each week that they are based, they are in the university courses and have these professors who will then stress test the approach that they're taking. So it's a really kind of comprehensive way. And then on the other side of it, you get our own policy colleagues who kind of end up with these finished products or minimal viable products at the end of the 10 to 12-week course. So also I should say that one of the best things about this is it doesn't bottleneck to our colleagues. Like when the students first start, they interview a bunch of people and then they kind of don't come back to us with asks, which is really great when you have a slightly under-resourced team. So these are some of the problem statements, and as you see from the title of this, I'll speak a bit more in depth about the bridge strikes one. But we have students covering a wide range of things from EV charging infrastructure, active travel infrastructure, performance analysis, fraud prevention, safety culture assessment. You know, I think there was conversations around autonomous vehicles, and I believe it even mentioned about accessibility. And one of the things the students at Imperial were looking at was how do you make people who have disabilities feel more confident using autonomous vehicles like public transport? These are really critical questions. So this is the, I'm going to share, this is all credit to the 4 master's students at Imperial College. But basically what it started as was Darren and I don't want to put you on the spot, Darren, but Darren's the actual problem sponsor. I'm more like the fluffer, if you will. We basically pulled together the original problem statement, and which is about kind of, yeah, road safety needs more effective ways to alert drivers of large vehicles about bridge height restrictions and strike risks in order to achieve enhanced road safety, reduce maintenance costs, and more effective and sustainable transport infrastructure. The beauty of this is also that in the process, the students rewrote our problem statement. They were like, that's really nice, but actually having done this work, this is a better question, which is something, unfortunately, we don't often have time to do, and that we can kind of approach things with a bit of solutioneering. And I shouldn't admit this, but I definitely, when I first heard of bridge strikes, thought it was a form of protest. So that's my insight. Well, can't be that effective. Right, so this is what, again, the students did all of this. So they interviewed 70 people over the course of the 10 weeks, which I think is something that we could all learn from. It's just go and learn and absorb and hear from a range of people to understand an issue in depth. So yeah, as you can see here, one of the big things is that the majority of interviewees said that they couldn't read the imperial height measurements on the signage, that a lot of these HGV drivers just didn't really actually register the height, which is a pretty fundamental issue when you also have seen like how, I'm not sure, I mean, I'm sure plenty of you have seen these bridges, what tend to be the approaches just add a lot more signs. But obviously that doesn't help if people can't really read the height of it. And also we've seen, as we saw, I think in Glasgow in December, there was a bridge that was hit with, I think it had like 14 signs. So at some point, it's not working. So this is literally exactly as they said, and they said that most of the people did not feel like the problem relied on the signs, and so there's a lot of information here that explores more of the behavioral side of it as well. So the key findings they said on the drivers is that it's not mandatory for drivers to take specific bridge strike courses. DVSA monitors hours throughout a tachograph records embedded in vehicles. There's a lot of pressure on drivers. They also highlighted that a lot of drivers will actually change vehicles up to 3 times a day and won't necessarily have the awareness of the height of their respective vehicles. And they did actually point out that there's a lot of stress. Obviously, we know that the conditions of some HGV drivers could certainly be improved, and if the depression levels are a particular point, it actually equates to being a certain level of drunk, which is pretty interesting but quite scary statistic. Darren and I found that there were a couple of times where the students went a little bit rogue with some of their findings, but it's still very interesting. So, got that one already. Did I go? Yeah, okay, there we go. And yeah, so it's they basically just did a ton of research into the behavioral side as well as the signs and then the infrastructure. They interview people from local authorities, civil engineers, national network rail rather, and it is one of those classic intermodal problems. Yes, they are rail bridges, but they are hit by drivers. So it's a really important example of something that needs to be properly connected. Check my time. Okay. So this is the solution they came up with, and granted, it was 10 to 12 weeks of work in this space, and so it's certainly not completely robust, but it's a really interesting starting point. And so essentially, as I said, they thought that actually we don't do enough with the information from the drivers themselves when they first um, the data of the drivers. There's not much use there, and there's a lot more application and opportunity. And like a lot of these things with technology in transport, one of the biggest things is just connecting up the data, which is probably something you're all very aware of. So they basically suggested that they have their own smart card that you then tap into your HGV when you first start driving. It links your license and kind of notifies them. They have a much kind of clearer idea of the measurements of that particular vehicle, but then that is then sent into a database. I was very excited by all these images that they pulled together. So the database is those barrels, I guess, of sorts, batteries. And then it goes into a portal, and then the portal will be accessed by a variety of stakeholders, like local authorities, network rail, national highways, and so on. And then basically, the operator, so then you can see here that there are also some what's it called, acronyms here that I'm also not sure of, which is very fun. But basically, that some of the bridges have existing sensors for even speed and such. So can you kind of rework them to then indicate that a bridge is actually it's too high for your particular vehicle and give you enough notice? Obviously, there have been quite a lot of examples around how you can use GPS and in-vehicle signage to kind of highlight to drivers that that particular route is not going to be suitable and so on. But it's just basically the entire premise is just linking up existing data, linking up existing bridge sensors to detect approaches, and just have it be a little bit more connected than it currently is. So, and then here being also that there's an operator risk profile and monthly report and just a little bit more accountability and transparency in that space. We also find that a lot of the bridges that do get hit aren't reported. So there's definitely space there for improvement. Now, I have not pulled this together. I mean, it's to kind of say that this is like the kind of be all and end all. It's a it's off the back of a 10 to 12-week program, but there's a lot more information that we have on this particular subject. And I know that bridge strikes is something that's really important to a lot of you here. It also costs, I think it's over £25 million a year. And for something that seems like a very odd issue to have, how can you just keep hitting bridges when they are clearly too short for your car to go, your vehicle to go under, but it keeps happening. And obviously the repercussions in terms of rail and tickets and so on is quite evident. So I wanted to flag this for many reasons, just to kind of show the breadth of projects that we're working on and the kind of style of upskilling we're trying to do across the department, but also to invite conversations. And if you have any reflections yourselves, or if there's anything that you're doing in this space that you'd like to collaborate with us on, if you actually worked on this with some of our students and you have any reflections and think that it wasn't necessarily represented that well, that would be really helpful. And also to flag that there in the department, there is a first of a kind or FOAC competition, which is with Innovate UK and DFT. And one of the subjects is bridge strikes. They're trying to focus the particular grants for this. And I believe it's up to £200,000 of funding. So if you have a project in this space, if you have ideas, that's definitely something worth flagging. And I'll put here. So, and then, yeah, basically, I wanted to just do this a bit of an ask is if you do have any problem statement ideas themselves, problem statement or challenge statement, just basically being, without solutioneering, this is an issue we're having. And if we improve it, this is the stakeholder or body that benefits from it. You don't have to answer it now, but just think about it and please do let me know. Because if it's not through this program, there are loads of other ways that we can collaborate with you. And then also, I think there's amazing work from the working groups that we saw, but I'm just curious whether or not people would be interested in, something I've spoken to Darren a little bit about, the idea of a potential innovation working group or something. I'm personally, I shouldn't say this because AI is in my title, technologically agnostic. If whatever technology is best to be used in that particular situation, then that's fantastic. But, I think there's a lot of potential for some real kind of coordinated and strategic innovation, and especially if we do it a bit more collaboratively. So yeah, please do, reach out to me. I'm around this afternoon. Be really happy to chat and hear your ideas, and also tell me that that's not very good or whatever. Be really happy to hear it either way. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.